prisoners in Ireland are held in solitary confinement for 22 to 23 hours a day, for months on end, sometimes even for more than a year. Now, on the 1st of January this year, a total of 51 inmates across various Irish prison services were being held in a cell for at least 22 hours a day. Half of them were there for over 100 days, and at least 9 of those prisoners had spent over a year in such conditions. Now, the United Nations and scientific evidence is actually unequivocal in relation to these matters. More than 15 days in solitary confinement means serious and sometimes permanent psychological damage. The UN Special Rapporteur on Torture has actually been even more unequivocal about Ireland's practice of locking up people in solitary confinement when he said recently, "There is no question to me that those people are suffering what constitutes cruel, inhuman and degrading treatment and perhaps even torture." Now, the bill creates a definition of solitary confinement for the first time in Irish law. I think this is critically important because without a definition, then those in authority can hide behind words. And in fairness, Minister, recently when I asked you about this situation, you used many different words: 23-hour lockup, punishment, restricted regimes, and all this different language means it's difficult to access data, it's difficult to keep tabs, and it does potentially have serious consequences on prisoners' human rights. I think we need to call it what it is, which is solitary confinement, and we need to accept just how serious it is and how damaging the consequences of its use and abuse can be. And I think in accordance with the United Nations, this bill states that no prisoner shall spend more than 15 consecutive days in solitary. It states that this should be an exceptional measure of last resort. It bans the use of solitary confinement as a punishment, prohibits the practice for those diagnosed with mental illness. Sadly, as too often happens, prisoners who are deemed to be unmanageable are placed in solitary confinement when in reality what they need is a serious psychological intervention. And by putting them in those conditions, we're actually making their conditions worse. And this is terrible for the prisoner themselves. It's appalling for the prison staff who are on the front line, who have to deal with difficult people who need specialised intervention. And it's damaging for society when these people are ultimately released, and they will be in all instances, because their problems are not only not going to be addressed, will actually be accentuated. So in moving the bill, Ceann Comhairle, I'm conscious that the government is going to be before the UN Committee on Torture next July. I think it would be really good if we had passed this bill in advance, because it's going to be one of the issues that the government is going to be questioned on.
Thank you, Deputy Daly. Is the bill being opposed?